Thank you, Madam President. You know, we all have state and local governments that have control over their own judicial systems. For example, in my state of Maryland, we have the Maryland, Court of Appeals, we have the lower courts in the state of Maryland, and then, of course, we have the federal court systems. What I'm talking about today has nothing to do with the federal court system. What I'm talking about today has to do with judges appointed to the District of Columbia. And because of current law, this Congress oversees those judicial actions. And I think we would all agree that if we were here in the United States Senate blocking decisions, nominations made for judges back in our states or our local jurisdictions, that would be a kind of bizarre thing to do. So I want to make it clear that today we're not talking about the Supreme Court of the United States or the U.S. Court of Appeals or federal district court judges. We're talking about the local judges for the people of the District of Columbia. And in that local court system, they have a commission that determines who the nominees are. But the president then nominates the local judges because of the statutes governing the District of Columbia within the United States Congress. And I've heard on the floor of the Senate many times legitimate concerns expressed about crime in the District of Columbia and a backlogged court system in the District of Columbia. And yet, some until today, and I hope today will be different, have blocked consideration or votes on the judges for the people of the District of Columbia. And because of that, Washington, D.C.'s court system has been plagued by vacancies for years. They currently have 11 vacancies, 9 on the Superior Court that handles civil, criminal, and small claims cases, and 2 on the Court of Appeals. And because of these vacancies, fewer judges are having to take on significantly more cases, leading to long delays. In some cases, these proceedings take years. Judges in the civil division are handling things like landlord and tenant disputes, medical malpractice, and discrimination. And they're handling double the casework that they used to, an average of 473 cases a year. Without the appointment of a new judge, in other words, we don't allow an appointment of a new judge here, there'll be only one judge handling all of the criminal domestic violence misdemeanors. 30 to 60 cases per day. I want to say that again. Unless we take this action, you're going to only have one judge overseeing criminal domestic violence misdemeanors, 30 to 60 cases a day, with longer waits for litigants and significant delays in resolving domestic violence cases. Judges are double and triple booking trial dates. 100 to 200 cases every year are delayed in the Court of Appeals. Again, not the U.S. Court of Appeals. I want to make it clear. This is the District of Columbia system and their Court of Appeals. The judges before us today are all nonpartisan. In fact, 2 of them were previously nominated by President Trump. Gives you an idea how long they've been waiting. They are not interpreting federal law. They're overseeing local criminal and civil cases, just like judges in our state and local courts, as I said. So I just want to be really clear, if our colleagues are going to delay these judges, they're going to make it even more difficult for the people of D.C. to deal with criminal justice issues and with their civil litigation. So I really hope, given the fact that we're not talking about federal judges, we will be able to proceed with these nominations and support them. And with that, Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that, as if in executive session, the Senate proceed to consideration of the following nomination. Kenechukwu O. Ochocha to be an associate judge of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia, that the Senate vote on the nomination without intervening action or debate, that if confirmed, the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate, that any statements related to the nomination be printed in the record, that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action.
Is there objection?
Madam President,
The senator from Kansas.
I object.
Objection is heard.
Well, Madam President, would be in order if I ask what the basis of the objection is, given the fact that these are nonpartisan judges for the District of Columbia. Would that question be in order if I were to yield to the gentleman?
The senator may ask questions to the chair.
Well, I'm just wondering if my colleague, maybe he doesn't, my colleague from Kansas would like to explain the basis for objecting to a judge, this particular judge, in the DC court system. I gather not.
The senator should continue.
I gather not. Okay. So I ask that it be in order to make the same request with respect to calendar number 767, Sherry Malloy Beatty Arthur, to be an associate judge of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia.
Is there objection?
Madam President, I object.
Objection is heard.
Madam President, I ask that it be in order to make the same request with respect to calendar number 768, Aaron Camille Johnston, to be an associate judge of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia.
Is there objection?
Madam President, I object.
The senator from Kansas.
I object, Madam President.
Objection is heard.
Madam President, I ask that it be made in order to make the same request with respect to calendar number 769, Ray D. McKenzie, to be an associate judge of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia.
Is there objection?
Madam President, I object.
Objection is heard.
Madam President, I ask that it be made in order to make the same request with respect to calendar number 770, Raquel Boucher, to be an associate judge of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia.
Is there objection?
Madam President, I object.
Objection is heard.
Madam President, I ask that it be made in order to make the same request with respect to calendar number 771, John Kwang Truong, to be an associate judge of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia.
Is there objection?
Madam President, I object.
Objection is heard.
Madam President, I ask that it be made in order to make the same request with respect to calendar number 838, James Graham Lake, to be an associate judge of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia.
Is there objection?
Madam President, I object.
Objection is heard.
Madam President, I ask that it be made in order to make the same request with respect to calendar number 839, Nicholas George Miranda, to be an associate judge of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia.
Is there objection?
Madam President, I object.
Objection is heard.
Madam President, I ask that it be made in order to make the same request with respect to calendar number 774, Carmen G. Iguina Gonzalez, to be an associate judge of the District of Columbia Court of Appeals.
Is there objection?
Madam President, I object.
Objection is heard.
All right, Madam President, I'm going to try one more time. I ask that it be made in order to make the same request with respect to calendar number 775, Joseph Russell Palmore to be an associate judge of the District of Columbia Court of Appeals.
Is there objection?
Madam President, I object.
Objection is heard.
Madam President, I would just say that, based on what I said in my earlier remarks, I have not heard, and the body's not heard of any good reason to be blocking these judges for the District of Columbia. Not heard one substantive objection to any of these individuals, have not heard any other rationale for why we're not going to act on these judges right away. And as I indicated, the result of inaction and blocking these judges is just to back up the entire court system of the District of Columbia. Criminal cases, civil cases, it makes no sense. And if someone was looking on the Senate right now, they would see this as one of the many examples of complete dysfunction because of the kind of obstruction based on who knows what rationale for doing the right thing for the District of Columbia. This is just one reason why many of us support statehood for the people of the District of Columbia. They shouldn't have to have the United States Senate sign off on their judicial nominations, just as we don't sign off on judicial nominations for state courts, whether it be the state of Wisconsin or my state of Maryland. We don't sign off on nominations for local courts in our states, but we do have that power for now and responsibility for now in the United States Senate, and this is just an example of total failure to live up to our responsibility to make sure that there's a functioning court system in the District of Columbia. So it's another bad day as we come to the close of this Congress, another unnecessary obstruction that just makes it more difficult for people to get justice in civil cases or in criminal cases, and for people to be held accountable in criminal cases, including, as I mentioned, the many domestic violence cases. So with that, Madam President, I yield the floor.